Happy Wednesday and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Rocketeer Minute, where each and every day, Monday through Friday, we go over 1 minute of the greatest adventure movie Walt Disney's ever made, the 1991 Joe Johnston-directed feature, The Rocketeer. I'm one of your hosts, Jim O'Kane of TVDads.com.
And I'm Hal Bryan, an airplane nerd from the Experimental Aircraft Association here in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. So Jim, here we go with minute number 83.
We're back in Howard Hughes' office. I love someday I want to start a company, and I'm running a little late on my age, but I want to start a company just so I can have an office like that with airplanes out my interior window looking over in a courtyard.
Isn't that just gorgeous?
Yeah.
I have a friend who worked for quite a few years at the Shuttleworth Collection over in the UK, and she had an interior office that looked out over into the hangar. And they have some of the most amazing collection of airplanes. So she could look out her office window and see what is, at the time still is, but maybe not for much longer, the only flying de Havilland 88 Comet, a bright red 1934 racer that won the McRobertson race. And it's just sitting out there in the hangar. I don't know how you get anything done staring at something like that.
I used to, when I worked for British Aerospace, one of the places I worked was at a Harrier plant in Kingston-on-Thames in Surrey. And they used to build the wiring harnesses for the Harriers there, and they would put the wiring harnesses into the Harriers, and then every once in a while they'd have one roll out. Everything work would stop, and everybody would look out the window and see this Harrier rolling between the buildings.
Oh, cool!
So not a bad job. It was a lot more exciting than. I also worked at Radio Shack once, and all I did there was count transistors. So,
so were you involved at all in the battery club at Radio Shack?
Oh yes, I had I had inventory of those batteries that people would check out. And
really,
yeah, and have arguments with people about why they needed to give me their name and address for each sales slip, and they'd say just make it out to cash, and you say, look, if I don't get 97% compliance, I'm going to get fired. Okay, that's why I need. If you ever want to boil it down, why they needed your name and address, because the people were going to get fired if they didn't.
I always wondered about that because that drove me nuts. That was one of the things that drove me away from Radio Shack. But as a kid, you know, when about the only cards I had in my wallet were the Radio Shack Battery Club and my membership in the Cousteau Society.
Oh,
and I still remember my membership number for some reason, 302378G. No idea why. And I got to tell Philippe Cousteau that once about 10 years ago. But I digress. The battery club, though, was great because I'm a kid and I walk into Radio Shack, one battery, please.
Yes.
And they once a month they have to give you a free battery.
Oh yeah. It's federal law, I think. So yeah,
it was.
We used to have people come in and now it's all go find a Radio Shack if you can.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but yeah, it was good times. I learned a lot about what people will buy and what people thought about electronics. So I had a fun time there, but I'm glad I don't work there anymore. Sorry about what happened to them, but they didn't turn into Best Buy. That was a mistake.
It's interesting. So you're saying you left, and now they're bankrupt and pretty much gone.
Yeah, I was just holding them up. Mostly, it's funny. I have a long string of companies that went out of business just after I left. So you can say I'm close them down, Jim. I think is my nickname in business circles. So
you're not just a clerk; you're a load-bearing clerk.
Yeah. Yes, when I go, I'm the canary in the coal mine, okay? If you see me leaving, run. Yeah. So, oh well. But fortunately, where you've worked previously, Microsoft is still there, and
that's true. Although my division was shut down. So
yeah.
But the Ellensburg Police Department is still there.
Oh, okay.
So they didn't decide to close up law enforcement.
There's still law and order there.
Yeah, so. Well, as much as there ever was.
Yeah, okay. But, we trust in you keeping EAA running, so
yes,
keep it going.
Absolutely. I'm not going anywhere. And you're going to stick it out for at least another, 26 episodes of this podcast.
We've got this ready to retire on, so that's fine. I guess we'll just never be at the level of Howard Hughes, but I don't know if I'd wind up in the penthouse of a casino somewhere with mason jars.
Right. Yes, and long fingernails and toenails, etc.
Yeah.
The paneling in this room is sure gorgeous, isn't it?
Oh, isn't it great? You never see that on HGTV. It's just they don't. I don't think they even sell that kind of paneling anymore.
I don't think so. It's Art Deco wall sconces.
And What's an aircraft company without a good sized fireplace right behind the desk?
Exactly.
Yeah, he built it all on basic aviation. So that's where. Speaking of which, we were talking in the last minute. Howard thought that Peavey coming up with a rudder to fly through the air was pure genius, but that really in the 1930s, rudders were the commonplace, weren't they? Generally, I mean.
Oh, sure, yeah. The basic control system that we're using in airplanes by that point had been. You can go back sort of as far or as recently as you want to from this era and really decide sort of who was behind it. The first person to build a flying machine of some kind that we would recognize as having movable control surfaces, which was sort of a movable tailplane, which was both rudder and what we would think of as elevator now. And that was George Cayley. And he was doing that with models in as far back as 1804, which is pretty amazing. And then in, there's 1849, he built a full-size glider, and to test it, and this was kind of typical today, but to test it, he didn't get on and try to fly it. He found a 10-year-old boy and then put the kid on it and said, "I'm sure it'll be fine," and sort of shoved him off a hill, and it flew. So, but anyway, Cayley back in 1804, of course, that's 99 years before the Wright brothers' success at Kitty Hawk. But really, for the Wrights, when they came along, they were at least arguably the first ones to really get that if you're going to move in 3 dimensions, you need 3 axes of control. So, of course, rudder is yaw, which moves the nose of the aircraft left and right. You can think of that just like the rudder in a boat, which has been around for hundreds of years at this point. Elevator for pitch, making you go up and down. And then some sort of control for roll. So if you imagine the wings of an airplane dipping left or right. Now, the Wrights used wing warping, where they actually sort of bent the structure of their 1902 glider in conjunction with rudder and elevator to coordinate the flight of the airplane, or flight of the glider at that point. And then, of course, in 03, they added an engine to that basic design and made history from there. And what they found was that you're trying to steer with just rudder, then you get into uncoordinated flight. So if you just make these very flat turns, it's very aerodynamically inefficient. It's also very, very uncomfortable for the person, pilot or passengers in an airplane. So you actually want to sort of roll the airplane into a bank and then use rudder and elevator to sort of pull and guide it through a turn. So the Wrights figured that out in 02, used it in their 03 flying machine. But then a few years later, when Glenn Curtiss came along and he started building airplanes, they were going, he was building his Curtiss pushers and things starting in about 09. And the Wrights and Curtiss started sort of a very bitter and acrimonious relationship with a lot of lawsuits and things back and forth and allegations of patent violations. But to get around having to pay to license the patent from the Wrights, Curtiss, instead of using wing warping, instead of sort of bending the structure of the airplane to make a turn, he put a hinged surface, sort of cut out a notch on each wing, put a hinge surface in there, which he called an aileron. And that's the control system that we still use to this day. Ailerons, elevator, and rudder all working together. Even though we do still see, like NASA is experimenting with some wing warping technology and things like this. But generally speaking, when you're flying an airplane, you don't really want to be bending it on purpose. That just never feels like a great idea.
Wouldn't you say that things like speed brakes and stuff is a form of wing warping?
Sure, yeah. I mean, you can make that case. Speed brakes still tend to be an individual panel or sort of like a physically separate surface that will pop up. But you are with wing warping, with speed brakes like that, with leading edge flaps and extended Fowler flaps and things like that, you're changing the shape of the wing in a way. I'm just my comments being a little glib as they are. We're not actually taking the physical structure of the airplane and bending it. So
I think the passengers would kind of get worried looking out the windows.
Exactly. Why is the airplane bent? But anyway, it's in Cliff's case, it's funny, we have this line here and that helps explain why that beautiful helmet looks the way that it does. But as we see, when he's flying in formation with the trimotor and things like this, and he's mentioned, Peavy's told him earlier, look with your eyes. If you turn your head, you'll go that direction. We don't ever really see that illustrated that strongly, but we know it's there as intent.
Yeah, it's supposed to look that way. So we'll
right.
I think in talking with a couple of people who actually fly jetpacks, we found out that the Rocketeer's setup basically from where his thrust comes from and the way he has control surfaces. It would never work in real life, but we don't have to have it work. It works good enough for a movie, and
Right.
we can believe in what PV seems knowledgeable about this stuff, so we can buy in on his.
Yeah, it looks absolutely gorgeous. But yeah, that rudder on the helmet is awfully small, and it's in kind of an odd and awkward place. You tend to have, for the most part, you have better luck with the rudder behind the center of gravity, behind the center of thrust, and things like that. But hey, it looks absolutely perfect. I wouldn't change a thing.
No, it's fine. It gives us a chance to get Hughes and PV to bond a little bit more, being fellow engineers and things like that. So it turns out nice, and just in time for currently arrested Clifford to show up.
Exactly.
We watch Philly. I'm saying Wooly and Fitch.
I say you're making a bromance out of this, aren't you?
Foley or Witch.
Couple now. Foley or Witch.
Fitch dumps a manila envelope full of the contents of Seacourt's pockets onto the table, just to say these are not rocket parts.
Yes, exactly.
Nothing vacuum cleaner shaped has been found.
I love that. As if the Cirrus X3 might possibly be in this manila envelope.
We think it's been bent into a mercury dime or something. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, we do see a couple of coins there, don't we?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, go right ahead. You were saying the coin. There's a couple of coins there.
So you see, what I thought at first glance was the Walking Liberty $50, but it's thanks to a tip from, you. I looked again. It's a Standing Liberty quarter, which is minted from 1916 to 1930. And that, along with the what they call the Mercury dime, which we'll get to in just a second, took the place of a whole series of coins that were just called the Barber coins, which had all been designed by a man named Barber and been in use for, I think, more than 25 years by the time 1916 came along. That Standing Liberty quarter has the figure of Liberty, obviously standing. She's holding a shield in her left hand, and she's looking to her left. She's got the olive branch in her right hand, and then on the back is a nice design. It's an eagle in flight. Still see these out there every once in a while, but they've not been minted since 1930. And then we mentioned the dime. They call it the Mercury dime because it's winged Liberty. It's her head on the face of it. A lot of people would look at that and think, well, okay, somebody with wings on a helmet like this, that's got to be the god Mercury, even though there's not really supposed to be any connection there. So that one also started in 1916 and lasted till 1945. Designed by a guy named Adolf Weinmann, who was a sculptor who did all sorts of things. Kind of an interesting guy because his work was almost a perfect bridge between sort of neoclassical type sort of heroic figures, but also the Art Deco style that came sort of basically right after him or as he was winding down his career. The one piece of his I know I've seen and admired, and he's done a lot of things around the country, but the one that I know I've seen in person is I've seen two. There's a relief called Drafting the Declaration of Independence, which is on the top it's on the pediment, I guess is the term, of the Jefferson Memorial in Washington, D.C. And then he's got a similar relief called Destiny, which is at the National Archives building, also in D.C. And it's beautiful work. And he also did what I thought the other coin was. He did the Walking Liberty $50, which is just very, very beautiful work, and in fact was intricate enough that the Mint wasn't sure they'd be able to actually successfully produce it, and they almost gave up.
And he has what's known as on the back of that dime is a familiar. There's if you actually in the House of Representatives, there's two of these emblems that surround the Speaker of the House's podium in the House of Representatives, and it's known as fasces, which. Originally had a very respectable background, but in the 20th century it kind of changed for the worse. The fasces means a bundle, and specifically a bundle of sticks. There's a couple of different tales that this comes from, but Aesop had one discussion about brothers who were fighting, and the fellow picked up a stick, an individual stick, and asked one of the brothers to break it, and he broke it easily, and then he wrapped up a bundle of about a dozen of them, tied them together, and said, "Now break it." The son couldn't break it, and he said, "So in strength of numbers and unity there is strength," and that's the original symbol there of in unity there is strength, which is a bundle of sticks or fascia. In the 20th century, of course, in Italy and also in Germany, the idea of a bundle of sticks being all of the same kind being unity, that developed into the political structure of fascism. So it's just one of those things that turned from a virtue into a vice,
Right.
within the past century.
Just like the good luck swastika
Yeah.
was co-opted. But interestingly, though, this symbol didn't seem to stand better on its own. As you say, we still see it in the House of Representatives. And here on the back of the Mercury dime, you can see it. At first glance, it almost just looks like a Roman column or something. But when you do look at it, you see it's a bundle of sticks, and it's presumably like a leather binding or something that holds them together. The whole thing, of course, surrounded by olive branches. We always incorporate that symbol of peace into our currency wherever possible. You mentioned Aesop's story. That also was used in the documentaries series of the Planet of the Apes and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. The whole apes together strong lesson that Caesar teaches. And I think that's clearly the most important piece of history we could bring out is the history of Caesar and the Planet of the Apes. And I'm just going to leave that right there.
Yeah, there we are. And all this was in Clifford's pocket, and he barely has enough. Well, he does have enough money to buy some soup and leave a tip for Millie.
Right. He's got a quarter, a dime, looks like a nickel.
Yeah, I'm saying 40 cents. So, and there might be something in that pile of keys.
Yeah.
Which I was looking in the pile of keys for a Ford truck key. I don't see one. It might be underneath some of them, or it could be just a Ford truck that had a starter button instead of a key. That was an option. That you could just have a button. And
it was still pretty common at this point too.
Yeah.
And that truck was a couple of years old. And I would think the same with the motorcycle. Presumably no key. For his late 20s Harley.
I guess he just didn't keep it on his keychain.
And of course the absolutely essential and obligatory Beeman's gum.
Yes.
Good old Pepsin gum.
With a stick missing, which is, I think, the one that or maybe two sticks missing because he was chewing one for his GB and then one for the one that's stuck on the back of the X3 right now.
Right.
I was trying to figure out where that wallet came from, but it's just too nondescript. Most of the wallet information I've known comes from the Connecticut Leather Company, which used to manufacture, they used to get tailings from leather companies to repair shoes. People used to buy shoe stuff from them, but then they started selling wallets, and then they started selling kits to build wallets. The Connecticut Leather Company shortened their name from Connecticut Leather Company to Coleco, and then went into selling wood-burning kits and leather-making kits, and then they got into electronics, and who knows what. It's just one of those things where the name change came from a bunch of other things. This is not a Connecticut Leather Company wallet. They weren't making those particular types of wallets during that day. But so if it is a Connecticut Leather wallet, it's an anachronism, and it is wrapped around obviously with Cliff's great hair. He has to carry his unbreakable plastic comb, which was, it's still to this day, that's kind of the standard size. It's like having a Bic pen. That is the standard size for a pocket comb, as it has been for a century. The particular one there, I can't see what the handle looks like, or the top part of the comb, but I would bet cash money that the word unbreakable is written on it. That is an obvious comb from the Viscaloid Company of Leominster, Massachusetts. My lovely wife lived in Leominster many years ago, and she the town was known as Comb City. The Viscaloid Company made combs. The equipment that they used was also made Foster Grant's plastic sunglasses, and later on, the ever-popular 1956, the Pink Flamingo. The Viscaloid Company came up with these unbreakable, pretty darn near unbreakable combs that you could just stuff in your pocket. They sold them in vending machines throughout the country and around the world. They sold them to the government. They wound up in GI packages everywhere, care packages and things like that. Everybody had a Viscaloid, or as the company that later bought them, DuPont, in 1925, the DuPont Viscaloid Company made this a universal product.
That's interesting, because I remember as a kid carrying the comb that said unbreakable on it, and then, every once in a while looking at that and kind of looking around furtively and thinking, is that really true? Is this a challenge? Can I really do this?
Yes. I can't rip a phone book. Maybe I can break a comb.
Yeah, exactly. Never had any luck. For those out there that are really interested in combs, there is a comb museum in Homer, Alaska. I've never made it there. When I get to Alaska, you can bet that You can bet that I will.
Write that on the bucket list.
Yeah, exactly. A friend of mine went to a hammer museum in Alaska and sent me a postcard from there, which I thought was pretty cool. But I had not heard much about the comb museum until recently.
There was, my wife and I were in the, now I can't remember the name of the town in North Carolina, but there is, just off of I-95, there is the Ava Gardner Museum. And that was her hometown. She apparently never came back there, but there were some people there that wanted to start a museum based on Ava Gardner. And they reached out and found a bunch of fans who really loved Ava Gardner and collected her old clothes. They bought out dining room sets from houses she moved out of and built this whole museum unauthorized by Ava Gardner. But I guess her family is okay with it now. We spent a lovely afternoon there, and I can recommend, if you're driving through I-95 in North Carolina and happen by a sign that says Ava Gardner Museum, I would really suggest pulling off and going there. It's worth seeing this collection of things that you never would have known about Ava Gardner. One of the things I learned is she had a 19-inch waist.
Wow.
Yeah. You just look at the dresses and it's like, how does that happen?
That's just unbelievable.
I would guess poverty and corsets, but
exactly.
Yeah, quite a thing to see. And,
which is your ticket to success, kids: poverty and corsets.
Yes.
Want to make it big in showbiz?
Yes, you could be married to Frank Sinatra for a while, and Mickey Rooney too. So
yes, also for a while.
So somehow we got to get back to the Rocketeer. So I'm just going to jump back in and say that's quite a collection of things that the Rocketeer has in his pockets.
Yes, it is. Who knew there was so much history there? Also, in the background here, and a couple of different times through the minute, you look for it, you can see Hughes has a beautiful sort of chromed display model of the H1 Racer, which is also, the replica of which is sitting right outside his window down in the hangar. I think we see it better toward the end of this minute, so maybe I'm jumping ahead too far. But
whenever I see coins in a pocket, something a rather tragic thing that I recall reading about growing up. I remember reading the story about there was a DC-8 that had crashed in New York. It was bound for back at the time it was called Idlewild Airport.
Right.
It was United. It collided with a Lockheed Super Constellation over the skies of New York City, and it was known as the Park Slope plane crash. One of the things I remember about it was that one of the few survivors of it was a little boy. He had survived for a day, I think. When the boy died, he had they had emptied his pockets, and they found a couple of coins that were like 65 cents in coins or something. And the father of the little boy who died gave the money to the hospital where he was being treated, and he died, I think, a day later. His name was Stephen Baltz. What happened was the hospital turned that money, the 65 cents, into a memorial that's inside where it's Methodist Hospital in Brooklyn, and you can still go there. There's a little plaque, and there's just a little handful of coins that is a memorial to the 135 people that died in that crash.
I'd never heard that about the coins. I'm familiar with the crash, that DC-8 and the Connie collision, and that was the worst.
Yeah, I think
aviation disaster up to that point. It was after there was the Grand Canyon midair, and about 4 or 5 years earlier in 1956, that had nearly as many fatalities and really kickstarted a lot of changes to air traffic control and things. But I never knew that about the coins.
Yeah, I would strongly recommend, if listeners are interested in finding out more about this, just look for Stephen Baltz, Baltz, the Stephen Baltz Memorial in Brooklyn. It inspired a lot of volunteer work in Brooklyn after that happened. So,
sure.
It's a terrible tragedy, but some good came out of it in helping Methodist Hospital and the work that they did, and especially with trauma medicine.
So the only other little bit of trivia I know of from that incident was, this may be apocryphal, but I had read that Edmund Hillary was supposed to be on that flight and was late, or on one of the two flights. I don't know if it was presumably the DC-8, but didn't show up, and so history turns out a little bit differently.
Yeah. Well, let's get back a little bit further to 1938 again, and we're watching. Sure. Howard Hughes Howard Hughes can order around FBI agents.
I just love that. And, we talked a bit yesterday and leading up to this about this whole sequence, could have been prolonged. We could have had Clifford sweating it out in FBI custody, overnight or something, or being confronted by Hughes and trying to convince him, no, I didn't steal it. I didn't really steal it on purpose, this kind of thing. But as we said yesterday, it's so nice he gets there. Peavy's already there. He's paved the way. He smoothed things over. It's okay. You don't need to tell the whole story again. Clifford Howard knows and he believes us. Now let's just give him the rocket and we can all be, all be done with this. I just remember on first viewing thinking, oh, I'm going to be so frustrated because we, the audience, knows Jenny's in trouble and we know the truth about how Cliff got the rocket, but we're going to have to endure this frustration of Hughes not believing him. And then just, no, it's okay. I believe you, but, I need the rocket back, please.
The one thing I don't understand, though, is he has the FBI there. He has Howard Hughes there.
Right.
Why doesn't he believe they can't help him? I mean, maybe it's just he's being forthright and he thinks that he has to solve all the world's ills because he's
right.
a Rocketeer. But I just don't understand. If he has all these people, Hughes is on his side at this point. I need my rocket back.
But remember, he's told, be at the observatory, come alone. They know he knows they've got Jenny, and people do tend to want to. That's the ultimate decision. And we've talked about kidnapping on this show before, but that's that ultimate decision you have to make. Is if they say no cops, do you follow their wishes or go to the police and trust them not to be ham-handed and screw it up in this case?
And we will be talking about that he is going to kind of spill the beans to them about, getting his girl. That'll kick off a bunch of other things in effect.
Right.
All of it is to serve the plot. So we have to keep that in mind. One thing I do wonder is how long does Howard Hughes always have a projectionist? Does that guy show up at 8:30 in the morning and goes home at 5? I'm going now, Mr. Hughes.
Right. Or another day with no movies.
Yeah.
And then, go ahead and roll it. Or, did he have it queued up to show Peavy, or had he already shown this to Peavy?
Yeah. Did they run it by him again? Did he show it to the FBI guys or who?
Right.
And how did? I mean, that's for another day. Actually, it's probably for tomorrow because we're going to talk about this stuff coming up. But yeah, I just wonder what he does. And does he have other movies? I Like to Sing or does he? Does he want to? Does he watch Bugs Bunny films? Does he have the newsreels brought in? I don't know. He's a multimedia guy. And
screen tests with shall we say buxom starlets?
Yeah, it could be.
That was certainly his thing.
Designing lingerie and undergarments and things, but he's got his fingers in RKO, or he is shortly. I guess he is a multimedia guy, like Cliff. He's got his 1 foot in Hollywood and 1 foot in a cockpit. But we're gonna have to leave that for another day, as we're gonna watch a movie next.
Exactly.
and that'll be tomorrow. We can talk some more about that. For folks who would like to join us, and I know we've been wide ranging here, so there's a lot of different topics. If you want to talk to us about things, come back and tell us what we were wrong about. But you can find us on social media all the time. Twitter at Rocketeer Minute. You can find us at facebook.com/Rocketeer Minute. Find us on the big site, rocketeerminute.com. Catch up on all the previous episodes, buy cool swag from Amazon, all that kind of stuff. If you are in the Chicago area on the weekend of August 25th, 2017, we are going to be at Movies by Minutes Chicago. Check us out at moviesbyminutes.com/Chicago, and you can find all the details, get tickets, and come and meet Hal, me, and a bunch of different podcasters all talking about movies way too much. We'd love to meet you and see you up there. So check us out, Chicago, Saturday, August 26th, 2017. And again, moviesbyminutes.com/Chicago. That's about it for today. Let's get your popcorn for tomorrow, and we're going to watch some movies here on the Rocketeer Minute. So until next time, over and out.
Go get him, kid.